My name is Maya Collins. I'm 26, and last Monday, HR asked me a question that made my coffee go cold in my hand. How long has your relationship with Cole been more than professional? The whole floor heard my name before the door to that glass office even closed. I could feel every pair of eyes tracking me down the hallway, past the rows of monitors and half-finished lattes, like I was walking to a courtroom instead of a meeting. I hadn't kissed my boss. I hadn't slept with him. But somehow, in this building, perception was already louder than the truth, and someone had been quietly turning up the volume for months. Before I go any further, tell me where you're watching from, and hit like and subscribe if you've ever dealt with a toxic boss, a jealous coworker, or a rumor that had a life of its own. I read the comments, and you'd be surprised how many workplace stories start exactly like mine. If any part of this already feels uncomfortably familiar, stay with me. Things only got worse from here. I didn't wake up one day and decide to be the center of someone else's office scandal. If anything, I spent most of my life trying to avoid attention. But looking back, there were signs. Small, harmless moments that only became dangerous when they stacked together. My first day at Harrington Tech's Seattle HQ felt like stepping into a world built for people richer, sharper, and more confident than me. The lobby had marble floors so shiny they reflected the ceiling lights, a massive touchscreen directory, and a Starbucks tucked neatly behind the security gates. I remember pressing my badge to the reader and hoping no one noticed how my hand shook. I'd worked so hard for this job, late nights, side gigs, a mountain of student loans, but walking into that building felt like stepping into someone else's life. Cole Harrington was the first person who made it feel like I belonged. He didn't introduce himself the way most managers do, with a quick handshake and a polite smile. He studied me the moment I walked into the project team's conference room, like he was trying to understand how I fit into the machinery of his department. He didn't smile at first, just observed me with this calm, assessing look before finally offering his hand. "You must be Maya," he said. "Welcome to the team." His handshake wasn't firm or performative. It was steady, grounding, and when he said my name, it sounded like he already knew who I was. The meeting that followed was a blur. Screens glowing, acronyms thrown around like everyone learned them in kindergarten, people typing while pretending to listen. I tried to absorb as much as I could without looking terrified. Then Cole asked a question no one else seemed ready for. "What's the biggest risk we're not talking about?" he said, scanning the room. Silence. People shifted in their seats. I felt my stomach clench, but I also saw something everyone else missed. The timeline on the slide didn't account for a vendor delay that had been posted publicly the week before. So I spoke. "There's a supply chain bottleneck that might push our testing window back," I said. "If that happens, our launch date becomes unrealistic." The room went still. For a second, I thought I'd overstepped, but Cole didn't flinch. He smiled. Not warmly, not in a way that made me blush. It was approval, clean and professional, like he genuinely respected what I'd said. "Good catch," he replied. "We'll build a contingency around that." That was the moment people started paying attention to me, the moment I became visible, not because of anything I did intentionally, but because Cole noticed. After the meeting, he walked beside me back to the open office floor. "Most new hires don't speak up for weeks," he said, "but you see things fast." I shrugged it off. "I just try to pay attention." "Well, that's a strength," he said. "Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." It should have been a harmless compliment. Maybe in another workplace, with another manager, it would have been. But in this building, every word out of Cole's mouth carried weight, and people noticed when he directed that weight toward me. The first week passed in a blur of onboarding meetings, Slack pings, and endless documentation. But the moment that stuck with me happened late on a Thursday night. I was still at my desk, working through a massive data reconciliation task that no one warned me would take hours. Around 8:30, I heard footsteps behind me. "Are you planning to sleep here?" Cole asked. I turned to see him leaning against the glass wall, jacket off, sleeves rolled up. His tie was loose, and he looked nothing like the polished senior PM who'd led meetings earlier in the day. "I didn't realize how long this would take," I said. "I'm almost done." He stepped closer, not in a threatening way, just closing the distance so he could see my screen. "You shouldn't be here alone this late," he said quietly. "This company doesn't reward burnout. Trust me, I've tried." He ended up grabbing 2 sandwiches from the cafeteria fridge and sitting across from me while I finished the last few lines of data. We talked about work at first, then about Seattle weather, then about books, music, all the things people share before they realize they've shared too much. That was the first night I felt the shift, small, subtle, atmospheric. The kind of shift you only recognize later when everything has already fallen apart. The following week, he added a recurring block to my calendar: 1-to-1, strategy, growth. At first, I thought it was standard mentorship. Lots of managers did that. But the rest of the team noticed how long those sessions lasted, how often we came out laughing about something scribbled on the whiteboard, how comfortable we seemed. They didn't see the nuance, the unspoken line I was trying not to cross, the tension I was ignoring because I needed this job, this paycheck, this chance to build a life that didn't revolve around debt and desperation. They saw something else entirely. By the time Derek started watching me like I'd stolen something from him, it was already too late. The first time I realized Derek had a problem with me, it wasn't because of anything he said. It was the way he reacted when Cole asked me, not him, to walk with us to a client prep meeting on the 20th floor. He didn't glare, he didn't roll his eyes, he just froze for half a second, like a tiny crack had formed in the version of reality he'd been living in. The version where he and Cole were still the power duo everyone talked about. I didn't know then what they'd gone through together, the layoffs, the long nights, the big wins that had cemented their reputation. I just knew Derek kept watching me out of the corner of his eye, calculating, measuring. And every time Cole praised something I'd done, Derek's jaw tightened just enough for me to notice. One late afternoon, I walked into a focus room and found Cole already inside, barefoot on the carpet, pacing with a marker in his hand. His sleeves were pushed up again, revealing the same tattoo I'd caught sight of during our first few sessions. It wasn't decorative. It was old, faded slightly, like something he'd gotten before he became this polished, corporate version of himself. He glanced up when I entered, and for a moment his expression softened. Not romantically, not yet, but warmly, like he trusted me. "Close the door?" he asked. I did, feeling the quiet click of the latch more intensely than I should have. He spent the next 30 minutes helping me rework a project roadmap I'd been struggling with. At one point, he stood behind me, leaning in just close enough to point out a dependency line on the screen. The air felt charged, heavy, not inappropriate, just too aware. I stepped back slightly, creating distance. He noticed, and for a split second, something flickered across his face. Restraint. Realization, maybe even regret. That night, I replayed the moment while heating up leftover pasta in my small apartment. It wasn't what happened that scared me, it was how it made me feel. How easy it was to fall into the comfort of someone older, smarter, stable. Someone who saw potential in me before I fully saw it in myself. Someone who wasn't supposed to look at me the way he sometimes did. But the truth is, Cole didn't look at me the way Derek claimed. Not back then. Not yet. Most of the time, he was careful, even formal. Most of the time. Then came the night of the production bug. It was close to 11 p.m. My phone lit up with a Slack ping from Cole. "Are you awake? We have an issue." I logged on immediately, joining a chaotic Zoom call filled with tired engineers. Cole's camera was on, dim apartment lighting, books and a guitar behind him, hair slightly messy. Not the polished Cole from the office, just a man trying to fix a problem before it spiraled. We spent over an hour debugging. At some point, he called me directly on FaceTime to walk through a workaround. It wasn't intimate on purpose. It was practical, faster than typing back and forth. But the frame was close, too close, and halfway through explaining a data patch, he paused and said, "You look exhausted. Get some sleep after this, okay?" I didn't realize until later how much weight that line carried, how someone hearing it out of context could twist it, how someone like Derek could weaponize it. The next morning, as I walked into the office with my Starbucks, I found Bree waiting for me at my desk. She had that look, curiosity mixed with concern. "So," she said, sliding into the chair next to me, "how's working with Cole?" I froze. Bree wasn't malicious, she wasn't gossiping, but even she had noticed something. "He's just a good mentor," I said. She raised an eyebrow. "Sure, just be careful how people interpret everything." I wanted to laugh it off, but the knot in my stomach tightened. People weren't just noticing, they were speculating. And Derek? He wasn't speculating, he was documenting. One afternoon, while grabbing hot water from the pantry, I heard two analysts whispering near the fridge. "Cole's basically grooming her for a fast-track promotion," one said. "Did you see how he looked at her in the meeting?" "That's how he used to look at Derek," the other whispered. My hands went cold around my mug. I left without saying anything, but the words stayed with me like a stain I couldn't wash out. It didn't help that Cole kept pulling me into high-visibility work. Not out of favoritism. I could feel he was trying to challenge me, push me, but to the rest of the floor, it looked obvious. Too obvious. The shift became undeniable the day Derek found me printing slides. He stepped beside me, leaned on the counter, and let out a humorless laugh. "You're moving fast," he said. "I'm just doing my job." "Right," he muttered. "That's what they all say." Before I could ask what he meant, he added, "He used to mentor me too, before you showed up." He wasn't looking at me, he was looking at the printer, fists clenched like the memory physically hurt. That was the first time I saw it. The jealousy, the resentment, the sense that he'd been replaced. And not just professionally. Whatever Derek thought he lost when I arrived, he was determined to take something from me in return. He just hadn't decided what yet. But soon, he would, and it would change everything. The shift from subtle tension to open hostility didn't happen overnight. It happened in fragments, quiet moments that should have meant nothing, except they all pointed in the same direction. Derek wasn't just annoyed anymore. He was building something, a narrative, a trap, and I was too busy trying to do my job to see it forming around me. It started the morning after Cole announced I would lead the holiday launch project. The meeting had ended with Derek's pen snapping in two, but no one said anything about it. Not then. They just stared at the pieces on the table before pretending to take notes. I felt my face heat, the kind of embarrassment you feel even when you haven't done anything wrong. But Cole hadn't looked embarrassed. He'd looked sure, confidence in me, which somehow made it worse. The next day, I walked into the office to find people already whispering. At my desk, Bree messaged me privately. "Are you okay? People are being weird." I typed back something like, "I'm fine," even though it wasn't true. Then, 10 minutes after I logged in, someone on the team posted a meme in a side channel, a picture of a ladder with a caption, "Some people climb fast." Under it, a few coworkers added the eyes emoji. They didn't tag me. They didn't have to. During the project kickoff that afternoon, I could feel Derek's stare drilling into me as I presented the updated timeline. Cole stood beside me, nodding as I explained risk mitigation, but it didn't matter how professional we were. Perception had already turned the room sour. Halfway through the meeting, when Cole praised my breakdown of the testing bottleneck, Derek let out a soft laugh. Not loud enough for everyone to hear, but loud enough for me. After the meeting, while people filed out, he stepped close. "You know this doesn't look good, right?" he said. I didn't turn toward him. "What doesn't?" "The way he watches you in every meeting," he said. "If you think people don't talk, you're dumber than I thought." The words didn't even sting immediately. They just sat there, heavy and cold, sinking deeper the longer I tried to pretend they didn't bother me. When I finally walked back to my desk, my hands were shaking, but that was just the beginning. 2 days later, a screenshot started circulating quietly, first in one private Slack group, then another. A screenshot of Cole's Outlook calendar. A column of recurring meetings, all titled One-to-One, Strategy, Growth, My. People pretended to scroll their phones while glancing at me. Someone at the coffee machine murmured, "That's a lot of time with the boss." But the part that gutted me was this. Cole didn't act any differently that day. Not colder, not warmer, just steady, focused, calm. Like nothing was happening. Like he didn't realize everything was happening. And maybe he didn't. He'd lived in a corporation longer than I had. He knew how to ignore noise. I didn't. I especially couldn't ignore what came next. Later that week, after a long meeting with an unhappy client, Cole sent me a DM on Slack. "You handled today beautifully. Proud of you." It wasn't romantic. It wasn't inappropriate. It was what any mentor might send their mentee after a tough call. I stared at the message for a long minute, feeling complicated things: gratitude, relief, exhaustion. Then I sent an emoji. Just a soft one. Harmless. An hour later, that DM appeared, screenshotted, in another semi-private Slack group. The emoji reply was circled in red. Someone wrote, "Professional." Someone else added, "LOL." I wanted to vomit. I didn't know who leaked it or how or why, but I knew who found meaning in it: Derek. He didn't confront me about the DM, not directly. He didn't have to. He started doing something worse, weaponizing silence. He'd stare at me in meetings like he was waiting for me to slip. He'd sigh dramatically when Cole asked for my input. He'd mutter under his breath, "Unbelievable," when Cole thanked me for staying late. Then came the first real sabotage. I sent updated financial projections to Lauren, the director above Cole. Everything was correct. I'd triple-checked. But the attachment she received had outdated numbers. Numbers that made it look like I hadn't read the brief. She emailed the entire team, CCing leadership, to ask what happened. I froze when I saw the message. Derek replied before I could. "Looks like an oversight. Happens." Happens? I never missed details. Never. Later, I checked my sent folder. The correct file was there, but the file she received wasn't. Someone had swapped the attachment. Someone who knew exactly what that mistake would look like. Someone who wanted to chip away at my competence, one tiny blow at a time. When I told Bree, she whispered, "This is targeted, Maya. Someone's messing with you." I knew. I just didn't know how far they were willing to go. The answer came 3 days later, when HR emailed me again. "Hi, Maya. We'd like to schedule a follow-up conversation regarding team dynamics and leadership interactions." Follow-up, as in something new had been reported, as in Derek wasn't hiding his campaign anymore. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. The investigation wasn't coming. It had already started. The follow-up meeting with HR was scheduled for a Thursday at 3:15 p.m., that strange, dead hour where the office feels half asleep, but everyone is still watching. I walked into Jenna's small office, noticing how she'd angled her laptop away from me this time. A small, unnecessary gesture, but one that told me she was hiding more than she intended to share. "Maya," she said gently, "thank you for making time again." I sat across from her, my hands clasped so tightly they ached. "What's this about?" She hesitated, a softness in her expression that felt practiced. "There have been additional concerns raised about boundaries on the PM team." My stomach dropped. "Boundaries?" "Specifically," she continued, "perceived favoritism, unusual levels of access, late-night communication. We want to make sure nothing is creating discomfort, for you or for others." Others. Derek. She wasn't saying his name, but I could feel him in every word. While Jenna talked, a notification flashed briefly on her screen. An email subject line: "Concern about senior PM, possible boundary issues with direct report." It disappeared as quickly as it appeared, but the words branded themselves into my brain. Anonymous complaint, formal language, possible boundary issues. Derek didn't whisper anymore. He'd gone official. When the meeting ended, I didn't walk out so much as drift. The hallway warped around me. The glass offices, the muted chatter, the whir of printers, they felt far away, like I was underwater. I was halfway to my desk before I realized I'd been holding my breath. Cole saw me first. He stepped out of a conference room, brows pulled together when he saw my face. "Maya, what happened?" I didn't want to tell him there, not in the open, so I just said, "HR, again." His jaw tensed. "Let's talk later." Later never felt further away. By the end of the day, everyone in the department was walking on eggshells. Small conversations were happening behind closed doors. People whispered when I passed, and the silence afterward was heavier than the chatter. That night, as I gathered my things, I saw a group of coworkers heading to happy hour, a gathering I wasn't invited to. I wasn't surprised. Betrayal rarely arrives with a dramatic soundtrack. It comes quietly, disguised as being left out. I took the elevator alone. The mirrored walls reflected a version of me I didn't recognize: tight shoulders, red eyes, a forced calm. When the doors opened in the parking garage, someone else stepped out of the shadows. Derek. He wasn't smiling. "Rough day?" he asked. I kept walking. "I don't know what you think you're doing, but you need to stop." He laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "Stop what? Pointing out the obvious? Or protecting the team?" "Protecting," I repeated. "That's what you call this?" "What would you call it?" he asked. "Cole giving you special treatment? Late-night calls? Weekly closed-door meetings? You think no one notices. They're work meetings," I snapped. His expression shifted, anger bleeding into something more fragile, something resentful. "He used to mentor me," he said quietly, "before you." And there it was, the origin point of his hostility, the wound he couldn't hide. "This isn't about mentorship," I said. "It's about you losing your place." He stepped closer, not threatening, but coldly deliberate. "You're playing a dangerous game, Maya. HR is watching. Leadership is watching. And Cole, he won't risk his career for you." I felt those words in my bones. He wasn't threatening me. He was warning me. But not out of kindness, out of envy. The next morning, things escalated faster than I could process. At 9:12 a.m., Lauren, the director above Cole, sent a department-wide email. "Please join the 2 p.m. meeting today to discuss PM team alignment and cultural expectations." A forced smiley from a coworker in Slack said it all. This feels ominous. Around 11 a.m., I overheard a conversation near the pantry. "She's too close to him," someone whispered. "I heard HR is already involved," another replied. "Well, if she gets promoted after this, you know why." Their words carved into me, each one a small incision. And the worst part? None of them questioned whether the rumor was true. They accepted it as fact. By noon, I couldn't focus. Every line of my spreadsheet blurred. Every Slack ping made my heart jump. When Eli stopped by my desk to ask a question about dependencies, he looked at me the way someone looks at a person standing on train tracks. "Are you okay?" he asked. I wanted to say yes. Instead, all I managed was, "I don't know." He hesitated, then added quietly, "People are saying things, Maya. And they're not stopping." The final blow of the day came when I returned from lunch and found Cole waiting by my desk. "We need to talk," he said, voice low. "We shouldn't," I whispered. "Not right now." His eyes searched mine. Hurt, frustration, something else I didn't want to name. "I didn't start this." "But you didn't stop it either," I said. For the first time since I'd met him, Cole looked like he didn't know what to say. The afternoon blurred into numbness until my calendar pinged for the 2 p.m. meeting. As I walked toward the conference room, I felt the weight of something irreversible tightening around me. the investigation wasn't whispered anymore. It wasn't implied. It wasn't subtle or deniable. It was happening. To me. To Cole. To whatever fragile connection had been building between us. And by the time I stepped into that room of glass walls and cold air, I knew this wasn't the climax yet. It was the beginning of the fall. The conference room they chose for the meeting wasn't one of the small huddle rooms. It was the big one, the one with floor-to-ceiling glass and a long table meant for client presentations and quarterly reviews. The kind of room where people's careers quietly rise or quietly die. When I walked in, the air felt colder than usual, the AC humming like background static. Jenna from HR sat at one end, Lauren, the director, sat in the middle, and Cole, my manager, my mentor, my almost something, was already seated, hands clasped, expression unreadable. There was an empty chair waiting for me. "Thanks for joining, Maya," Jenna said, as if I'd been invited to a polite discussion instead of an interrogation. I sat, feeling the glass walls behind me tremble faintly as people passed outside. I wondered how many coworkers were pretending not to look in. Lauren started. "We want to address concerns around team dynamics, perceived favoritism, and professionalism. We're hoping for clarity today." Clarity. That word had been poisoning my life for weeks. Before I could respond, the door opened. Derek stepped inside. Of course he did. He took a seat across from me, spine straight, expression almost sympathetic, as if he were here to support me through a difficult time instead of the reason it was happening. Jenna folded her hands. "We've received reports, both anonymous and direct, indicating that the relationship between you and Cole has created discomfort for others in the department." My throat tightened. Discomfort how? Derek exhaled softly, the way someone does before delivering bad news. "Maya, this isn't personal, but people have noticed the closed-door meetings, the Slack messages, the late-night calls. It creates questions." I stared at him. Questions or accusations? He didn't answer. Jenna turned to Cole. "We're concerned about the amount of one-on-one time you've scheduled with Maya. It's unusual for a junior PM to receive that level of access." Cole's jaw flexed. "I mentor high-potential employees. That's part of my responsibility." "And late-night communication?" Jenna asked. "It was work-related," he said. "A production bug." The attention shifted to me like a spotlight. "Maya," Jenna said gently, "we want to ensure you never feel pressured or influenced by the power dynamic. Are you comfortable speaking about that?" I felt heat rising in my face. I wasn't pressured. Even subtly? I hesitated. It was the wrong moment to pause. The room inhaled sharply, as if my silence confirmed the story they'd already written. Derek leaned forward. "It's okay to say it. Nobody will blame you." I turned toward him, anger flickering in my chest. "Say what, Derek? That I earned my work because of him? That every late night, every weekend, every deliverable was suddenly meaningless because you felt threatened?" His eyes cooled. "I'm trying to help you." "No," I said. "You're trying to help yourself." Lauren cut in. "Let's keep this constructive." But the damage was done. Derek's expression, wounded, self-righteous, had shifted into something darker. Jenna clicked her mouse, turning her laptop slightly. "Before we proceed, we need to acknowledge something else." She took a breath. "Cole, this is not the first time your name has been associated with boundary concerns." The room seemed to tilt. "What?" I whispered. Cole didn't react, except for a subtle tightening of his shoulders. Jenna continued. "Several years ago, a former intern filed a report expressing discomfort. The case was closed without disciplinary action, but the pattern is concerning." Pattern. That word hit me harder than anything Derek had thrown at me. I looked at Cole, suddenly seeing a version of him I didn't know, a version he hadn't told me about. His eyes met mine, an apology, a plea, a warning, none of it clear enough to hold on to. Lauren leaned back in her chair. Given the circumstances and the potential perception issues, we may have to consider reassigning responsibilities on the launch. Reassigning? The project I had poured everything into. I felt something inside me break open. Not fear, not humiliation, but a cold, startling clarity. They were going to do it. They were going to quietly move me aside, let a rumor define me, let Derek walk out untarnished, and Cole walk out wounded but intact. And I would be the collateral damage, the acceptable loss. If I stayed silent, they would write my story for me. I inhaled slowly. My voice, when it came, was steady. "I'd like to speak." Jenna nodded. "Go ahead." I turned toward Lauren first. "You're questioning the one-on-one, but Derek had the same recurring meetings with Cole for almost 2 years. I have the old calendar exports. They're still on the shared drive." Derek stiffened. I continued. "You want to talk about late-night messages? Check Slack logs from last quarter. Derek also messaged Cole after hours about vendor escalations and reporting issues." Lauren blinked, confused. Jenna looked sharply at Derek. "And if the rumor is that Cole mentors only the people he's involved with," I added, "you should also know he mentored 2 analysts before me. One now works for Amazon, the other was promoted last year." Silence fell like a curtain. I wasn't done. "Someone swapped my spreadsheet attachment before it reached you, Lauren. IT logs will show who accessed it. And someone filed an anonymous HR complaint the same day Derek exported the team calendar. I checked who downloaded the file. There's only one name." Every face turned toward Derek. His jaw twitched. "You're twisting this." "No," I said quietly. "You did." The room was frozen. Jenna looked stunned. Lauren straightened in her chair, recalibrating everything she thought she understood. Cole stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. I stood slowly, feeling the tremor in my hands, but not letting it weaken my voice. For weeks, I've been trying to defend myself against a story someone else was writing. I'm done with that. I walked to the door, paused, and glanced back. "You wanted clarity," I said. "There it is." And then I stepped out, leaving all of them in that cold glass room, staring at the pieces of the truth they hadn't expected to see. I didn't go back to my desk after I left that room. I walked straight to the stairwell, closed the door behind me, and let the silence settle around me like armor. My hands were still shaking, but not from fear. For the first time in weeks, the shaking felt like release, like something inside me had finally stopped letting other people bruise it. In the hours after the confrontation, everything moved quietly, almost clinically. HR didn't call me back. Lauren didn't request a follow-up. No one stopped me on the way out of the building. It was as if the department was holding its breath, waiting to see which way the story would tilt. By the next morning, the tilt had begun. Derek wasn't at his desk. A message appeared in the team Slack. "Derek will be transitioning off the launch project effective immediately." No explanation, no elaboration. But people weren't stupid. The whisper network that had once cut into me now turned in another direction. Screens lit up across the office with speculation. Chairs rolled closer. Eyes widened when I walked by. Not with judgment this time, but with an awareness that something had shifted, and I wasn't the one being pushed under. Cole didn't message me that morning. I wasn't sure if that hurt or helped. HR might have told him to keep distance, or maybe he understood that I needed space to breathe, to think, to choose what came next. Around lunchtime, as I packed up for a walk outside, an email arrived, from him. Subject: "If this ruined anything for you." The preview line ended there. I didn't open it, not yet. Instead, I walked out of the building and into the chilled Seattle air, feeling the wind bite at my face in a way that grounded me. For weeks, I'd been trapped inside a narrative someone else authored, but now? Now I held every missing piece, The logs, the timestamps, the access history, the Slack exports. They thought the meeting had ended the story. They were wrong. All it did was give me permission to stop protecting people who never protected me. And if they wanted a clean narrative, one where everything wrapped neatly, they should have thought of that before turning me into the villain. Because I wasn't walking away, I was just getting started. If you've ever been blamed for something you didn't do at work, or watched a rumor spread faster than the truth, make sure you're subscribed. This story isn't finished. Offices look polished from the outside, but inside it's people like us, overworked, underestimated, and pushed until we break, who see what really happens. Hit like, share this with someone stuck in a toxic workplace, and tell me in the comments what you would have done if you were in my place. I read everything. And who knows, your story might be the next one I tell.